So welcome really to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the GCSE practice paper of 2023 Higher Set 2 Paper 2, which is a calculator paper. And as always, I'll include a question breakdown in the description below so you can see that if you get stuck on a particular question you can see what topic it refers to and maybe go back and review and revise that topic. So let's get started on this practice paper of 2023 Set 2 Paper 2, which is a calculator paper. So looking at question 1, it says, here is a linear sequence, write down the expression for the nth term of the sequence. So for this, what we need to do is first of all work out the difference, which is plus 5. Oh, excuse me there. We've got plus 5. And so 5n is going to be in the formula. And then all we then need to do is just say, how do we get from 5 to the first term? Well, I've got to take away 2. So then the nth term is going to be 5n minus 2. Then for question 2, it says work out the fraction that's equivalent to 0.5%. Well, that's going to be 0.5 over 100. Then we get rid of the decimal by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by 10. So that becomes 5 over 1000. And then we simplify it further to give our answer of 1 over 200. Then for question 3, it says a straight line has the equation of y equals 6 minus 2x. Write down the gradient of the line. Well, the gradient of the line is the coefficient of x, which is minus 2. Then moving on to question 4, it says there are between 20 and 30 students in a class. The ratio of left-handed students to right-handed students is 3 to 8. How many students are there in the class? Well, to work this out, what we need to do is first of all work out what the total number of parts, which is 11 parts. So that means that the answer needs to be a multiple of 11, but between 20 and 30. So here we're looking for 11, 22, 33. Well, 11 and 33 is too much. So the correct answer has got to be 22. Now for 2 marks, it's really important that you show some working out, because I don't think you'd allow getting 2 marks just for writing 22 in itself. Moving on to question 5a, so we want to solve this inequality. So the first thing I need to do is get rid of the 3 by multiplying by 3. So that then leaves me with 2x is less or equal to 12. Then I divide by 2, leaving me with x is less or equal to 6. Then for question 5b, we want to solve this equation, so I expand the brackets, in which I get 4x plus 4 is greater than 12. Take away the 4 from both sides, leaves me with 8. So then x is going to be greater than 2. The next question then, C says represent the solution set that satisfies both answers in part A to part and part B on the number line. So it's got to be between 2 and 6. It can be 6, I'm going to shade that in. And then we just want to draw a line between those 2 circles where 2 is unshaded. Moving on to question 6, it says this formula works out the tax you pay on what you earn. And it says T equals the tax you pay in pounds. E is the amount you earn in pounds. Alison pays 6,300 tax, and work out how much the amount she earns. So for this, what we need to do is we're going to substitute T equals 6,300. So I've got 6,300 equals 0.2 E minus 12570. So first things first, I'm going to divide by 0.2, which then leaves me with an answer of, and I'll type that into my calculator, 63 divided by 0.2, which leaves me with 31,500, and that equals E minus 12570. So then I want to add 12570, leaving with the answer of E. So if I just work that out on my calculator, I get an answer of 44070. Question 7 then says to solve x squared equals 12.25. So I want to do x equals plus or minus the square root of 12.25. which gives me an answer of plus and minus 3.5. Now you could write your answer separately, but make sure that you are showing that there are 2 solutions. Moving on to question 8, it says the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed, where r is the radius. Work out the volume of a sphere with radius of 6. So here I'm just substituting r equals 6 into this formula here. So v equals 4/3 times pi times 6 cubed. And that'd be worth 1 mark just by writing that. Then if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 288 pi. Or I can convert it into a decimal, which is 904.778642, 842 I should say. And then round that up, you could say 904.8, and then just state what you rounded it to. So any of those answers would be absolutely fine. But if you're rounding, make sure you are stating what you've rounded it to. Question 8b says 4 spheres of radius 6 centimeters are packed tightly into a cuboid as shown, and the question is asking us to work out the volume of the cuboid. So if the radius is 6, then the diameter is going to be 12, and I've got 4 of those. So 4 lots of 12 is 48. We then know that this is going to be 12 and that is going to be 12. So then the volume is going to be 48 times 12 times 12, giving me a total volume of 6912, and that's going to be in centimetre cubed. Moving on to question 9, it says here are 2 piles of the same type of paper. Each sheet of paper weighs 5 grams and the taller pile weighs 7.5 kilograms. The ratio of the height of the taller pile to the shorter pile is 5:3, and the question is asking us to work out the number of sheets of paper in the shorter pile, and it's worth 3 marks. So for this first, let's work out the number of sheets in the larger pile. Well, for that, what I need to do is I need to do 7,500 divided by 5, because we notice that the sheets are measured in grams, the total weight is in kilograms, so we need to make sure that that's converted. So if I type that in, we can then see that we're going to end up with 1,500 sheets. So from this, what I can then do is work out the weight of let's have a look here. So then from this, what I can then do is to work out the height of each sheet. So the height of each sheet is going to be 10.5 divided by 1500. And if I type that all into my calculator and do that now, so 10.5 divided by 1500, I get 7/1000. And I'm going to leave it as a fraction. I could write it as a decimal, which is 0.007. So then from this, what I can then, that's in centimeters. Now from this, I can then work out the height of the shorter pile. And by using the ratio, I'm going to do 10.5 divided by the number of parts, which is 5. And then that gives me an answer of 10.5 divided by 5 of 2.1. And that's 1 part. So then 3 parts is going to be 2.1 times 3, which is 6.3 centimeters. Then from this, what I then want to do is to then see, well, how many sheets are there going to be? Well, for this then, I can then do, so the number of sheets in the smaller pile is going to be 6.3 divided by 0.007, and 6.3 divided by 0.007 gives me an answer of 900 sheets. And there's my final answer for question 9. Moving on to question 10, it says here are 4 triangles. Let me just zoom out a little bit. And it says which 2 triangles are congruent. So for this, what we need to do is to find out which ones. Now for this, what you might want to do is work out what the missing angle of the triangles are when you're given 2 angles. So here we've got 30 plus 65 is 95. So then this angle here must be 85. So let me just mark this 85-degree angle here. And so looking at this, let's have a look at which triangles are going to be the same. So 5 is on the side which has got 30 and 65. So at the moment I would say J and K are congruent. And then for this, which is where a lot of students would lose a mark, is you just need to state your reason why. And you could say because of ASA. Because 2 angles and a side are the same. Moving on to question 11, it says describe fully the single transformation that maps A to B. So we're going from this shape here to this one here. Now hopefully you would have spotted that this is an enlargement, and so what we need to do then is to find out the properties of an enlargement by joining the points up. So let me just do that to find the center of enlargement. Now, do you need to draw your projection lines? I would say it would definitely be advisable. But if you can see it straight away, then there is a good chance you would get full marks. But because it is, let me just see how many marks it is worth while I just finish this projection line there. So for the 3 marks, I would say, let's go back, 3 marks, then we would say that it's an enlargement of a scale factor. Now it's going to be from A to B, so it's going to be of 3, not a third, and the center is 0, 3, 0. And there we go. Moving on to question 12, it says that a menu has a starter, 2 starters, 7 mains and 4 desserts. And so questions asking work out how many different choices of a 3-course meal are possible. So for this, all we need to do is just simply multiply those 3 numbers together, in which I get an answer of 56. So moving on to question 13, it says on the 1st of January 2021, Carmen invested some money into a bank account. The account pays 1.5% compound interest per year. On the 1st of January 2022, Carmen added £2,000 into the account. On the 1st of Jan 2023, she had 10,271.80 pence in the account. Work out how much money Carmen originally invested into the account. So looking at the first, working backwards, so this was our answer from the compound interest. So rather than multiplying, we're now going to divide by the decimal multiplier, which was of a 1.5% interest, 1.015. And if I type that into my calculator, so 10271.8 divided by 1.015, I get an answer of £10,120. Now she then added £2,000, so I need to take that away. And so if I minus £2,000, I get 8,120, and then I need to just take away another 1.5% increase. So I divide by 1.015 again, and I get a final answer of £8,000. Moving on to question 14 then. So question 14 says, in this question, all lengths are in centimetres, and it says, given A to B to C to D is in the ratio 1 to 2, show that AB to A to D is in the ratio 2 to 5. So with this, let's first of all work with this first bit of information. So if I write that as a fraction, so AB over CD equals 1 over 2, I can then work out what AB is. So A to B is 2x minus 4 and c to d is 3x plus 4. Now if I take these two and I cross multiply, then what I end up with is 3x plus 4 equals 2 lots of 2x minus 4. Expanding the brackets out, I'm going to get 12 equals x. Then from this, what I can then do is using this, so let me just draw an arrow going over here, we then get a to b is going to be 2 times 12 take away 4, which is going to give me 24, take away 4, which is 20, and c to d, a to d rather, is going to be 5 times 12 take away 10. Well, 5 times 12 is 60, take away 10 is 50. So then the ratio of a to b to a to d is 20 to 50, which simplifies to be 2 to 5, which is exactly what they wanted me to show. Moving on to question 15, it says the probability that Jarwin gets a takeaway on a Friday is 0.8. The probability that Claire gets a takeaway on a Friday is 0.7. These probabilities are independent, so basically one has no impact on the other, and the question is asking us to calculate the probability that both Jarwin and Claire get a takeaway on Friday night. So for this it's going to simply be 0.8 times 0.7, which gives me an answer of 0.56. For question 15b, it says if Claire gets a takeaway on a Friday night, the probability that she gets one on Saturday is 0.3. If Claire does not get a takeaway on Friday, the probability she gets one on Saturday is 0.9. Calculate the probability that Claire gets a takeaway on exactly one of the 2 days. Now for this particular question, I would strongly recommend you draw a probability tree. So looking at Friday night, if Claire gets a takeaway and not gets a takeaway, so just put T dash. Now looking at the first part of the question, it tells us that Claire getting a takeaway is 0.7. So on Friday, it's going to be 0.7. So the probability of her not getting a takeaway is 0.3. Then looking at Saturday, and I've probably just cramped this probability tree up. So let's do this. So the probability that if she gets one on Friday, that she gets one on Saturday is 0.3. So the probability she doesn't get one on Saturday is going to be 0.7. And if she doesn't get one on Friday, then the probability she gets one on Saturday is going to be 0.9. And so therefore the probability that she doesn't get a takeaway is 0.1. Now if I just write down the outcomes of each of those branches, so I've got TT, T and not T, not T and T, and not T and not T. Now the question is asking what's probability of getting each of those. So if I just multiply the probabilities up, I get 0.21, 0.49, 0.27 and 0.03. Now the probability that there's only one T is either this or this. Now if I add, well, because it's or, I add the two probabilities. So it's going to be 0.49 plus 0.27, which gives me a total of 0.76. So moving on to question 16, it says the area of a right angled triangle is 20 centimeters squared. The height of the triangle is twice the size of the base. Work out the perimeter of the triangle in centimeters. So for this, we've been told that the height of the triangle is twice the size of the base. So if I call the base x, then the height is going to be 2x. Now to work out the perimeter, I can then use Pythagoras to work this out. So looking at that line there, now what I'm going to do first is I'm going to try and work out what x is, because the area of the triangle equals base times the height divided by 2. Now I know what the area is, and I know now what the height and the base is in terms of x. So taking this out, what I've got is I've got 2x times x divided by 2 equals 20. Simplifying that, I get 2x squared equals 40. Cancelling the 2's, I get x squared equals 20. So x equals root 20. So I can then change this to root 20, and I can change this for root 20. So then to work out what the length is, so if I just call this h because I've already used x, so using Pythagoras, h squared equals, and it's going to be 2 root 20 squared plus root 20 squared. Now h squared equals, now square the 2, that gives me 4, square the root 20 and that gives me 20. So that becomes 4 root 20, and again the square root and the square cancel out, so that just becomes 20. So h squared equals 100, meaning that h equals 100, equals 10 rather, which is the square root. So let me just write that down. So h equals the square root of 100, which equals 10. So then from this, I can then work out what the perimeter is going to be by adding up those three sides. Now, root 20 I can simplify as being root 4 times root 5, which is 2 root 5. So then using all of this bit of information here, what I've got is that the perimeter equals, it's going to be 2 root 20 plus 10 plus root 20. Now this, using that root 20 equals 2 root 5, is going to be 2 lots of 2 root 5, which is 4 root 5, plus 10 plus, and this is also 2 root 5. And then simplifying all of that, what do I get? Well, I get 6 root 5 plus 10, and there is my final answer. Or you could write it as 10 plus 6 root 5, but either way would be fine to get the full marks. Moving on to question 17, it says the height h of a ball at time t seconds is given by the function, and the question is asking us to draw a graph to represent the height of the ball in the first 10 seconds. Now, if you've not looked at function graphs before, then do not worry, but basically when you are using values of t between this range here, you need to use this function. So basically when t is between 0 and 3, inclusive of those numbers, then the height of the ball is going to be 0. So between 0 and 3, it's just going to be at 0. Now when t is between 3 and 10, then to work out h, I need to use this function. So if I just set up a table of values, so I've got values of t, and I'm going to use 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I want to work out what h is. So to work out h, I've got to substitute the t value into this expression here. So the first bracket is 13 take away 3, which is 10. The second bracket is going to be 3 take away 3, which is 0. So that gives me 0. When t is 4, 13 take away 4 is 9. And 4 take away 3 is 1, leaving with a final answer of 9 times 1, which is 9. Then we end up with 8 times 2, and hopefully you'll slowly see a pattern forming. And coincidentally, it gives me, now this might not apply to every single one of these types of questions you do, but basically if I just fill in the numbers, I get the following. So what I now need to plot is this against this. So that gives me my coordinates, and then hopefully it gives me my point. So if I just have it so it just about fits on the screen. So 3 is 0, 4, 9 is there, 5, 16 is there, 6, 21 is there, 7, 24 is there, 8.25 is there, 9.24 is there, and 10.21 is there. Then all I then need to do is, as accurately as I can, is join those points up like you're doing a dot to dot, and making sure that you're also joining the ones from 0 to 3. So you should end up with something that looks like this. Then for 17b, it says by joining the points on the graph where t equals 5 and t equals 8 with a straight line, work out the average rate of change of the height between 5 and 8 seconds. Now this rate of change is basically the gradient. So if I join, let's draw a straight line from 5 to 8, and again this is going to be a little bit more awkward, so just bear with me with regards to the time. And so what I'm needing to do is to work out the gradient of that line there between those points that I've plotted. Now you want to try and be as accurate as possible, so this coordinate here is 25, it's going to be 8.25, and this point here is 5 and 16. So if I turn that into a triangle, I know that I'm looking at a positive gradient, so the difference in the y is 9 and the difference in the x is 3. So then the gradient is going to be 9 divided by 3, which gives me a final answer of 3. Moving on to question 18, it says in this question, use 1 pound equals 0.4536 kilograms, 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. The density of concrete is 0.09 pounds per cubic inch, and the question is asking us to convert density, the units of density, to grams per cubic centimeter. So from this, let's first of all work with this answer here. So we've got 0.09 pounds per cubic inch, and that translated is 0.09 pounds over 1 square inch. Now what I want is I want grams and I want centimetre cubed. So to get from pounds to kilograms, I've got to multiply by 0.4536, and that converts it into kg. But then to convert it into grams, I've then got to multiply by another 1,000, and that will convert it into grams. So that top number is going to be 0.09 multiplied by 0.4536 multiplied by 1,000, and it gives me an answer of 40.824. Then to get from square inches to cubic centimeters, well, this, to convert it into centimeters, I need to multiply that by 2.54, but because I want cubic inches, I've got to cube that number. So that's going to be 2.54 cubed. Now this is what I now need to type into my calculator. So then my final answer is going to be 40.824 divided by 2.54 cubed. So divided by 2.54 cubed, and that gives me an answer of 2.491233329, and rounding that up gives me 2.49 grams per centimetre cubed, and that's to 2 decimal places. Moving on to question 19, it says the ages of 100 people were entered who entered a theme park one day were recorded, and it says there was a special offer. 18-year-olds and under are free, and over 18s pay £36. On average, 8,000 people visited the theme park. Estimate the total amount of money taken in each day. So what I want to try and work out is how many over 18s or how many under 18s there were, and take that away from 100. Now 18 falls within this category here, which is my second group. Now these 35 people, we're just going to assume that there's an even spread of people. So what I need to do is I need to work out how many people are in that 15 age range in each of those ages. So if I then do 35 divided by 15, and this is the class width, this is the frequency. I'm not trying to work out the frequency density, but what I'm trying to do is see how many people there are per year in that group. So from this, what we've got is 35 divided by 15, and that gives me an answer of 7/3 people per year in this group. Now 18 is 3 years, so 15 to 18 equals 3 years. So to find out how many people there are between 15 and 18, I then need to do 3 times 7/3, which gives me an answer of 7 people. So 7 people out of that 35 are under 18, so therefore from that group, if I do 35 take away 7, that gives me 28. So 28 people out of 35 in the age range of 15 to 30 years old are above 18. So I can then write 28. So then to work out the total number of over 18s, well, that's going to be 28 plus 28 plus 21 plus 4. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get 81. Now the question then says, how much money are we expected to get? Well, for this then, I can then do 81 multiplied by £36, and 81, and if I type that in, 81 times 36 gives me an answer of 2916. Now that's how much money was earned from the 100 people, but there are 8,000, so I then need to multiply that by 80 because that's how many hundreds there are in 8,000. So then 2916 multiplied by 80 gives me an answer, or final answer, of £233,280. Now another way of doing it is basically once you've worked out the proportion, I could do 81 out of 100 and then multiply that by 8,000, and from that I would then still get the same answer as what I had there. And then obviously multiply that by £36. Then moving on to 19b, it says Jane says 12% of the people entering the theme park are under 15 years. Explain why she may be wrong. Well, for this there's a couple of reasons which you could say. So you could say something along the lines of that only a sample was used. So we know that 12% was from the sample, but how representative is that sample? So only a sample was used. You could say just exactly what I just said there. So may not be, or the sample so the sample may not be represented or representable of the population. You could say something along the lines of that it might be different on a different day or time that the data was recorded. So you could say something along the lines like that. You could say we don't know what time, so the 100 people were selected. So if they were done in the morning, you might find a pattern in the ages. If they were done in the afternoon or later on, you might find a pattern in the ages. So something along the lines for that 1 mark would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 20, it says write x squared plus 8x plus 6 in the form of x plus a squared plus b. So this is basically completing the square. So for this, we set up our format, and the number inside the bracket is always half the coefficient of x, so that's going to be plus 4. My plus 6 stays the same, and I always subtract the number inside the bracket squared, so it's minus 4 squared. So then simplifying all of this, I get x plus 4 squared plus 6 minus 16, leaving me with x plus 4 squared minus 10. Question 20b then says a sketch of x squared plus cx plus d is shown. The turning point is 4, 7. Work out the values of c and d. Well, if the turning point is 4, 7, then what I end up with is this. And if I know that the turning point is minus ab, well, minus a equals 4, so therefore a equals minus 4, and b equals 7. Well, then if I then substitute these numbers into this expression, I end up with x minus 4 squared plus 7. Now I then need to expand this out, so if I just make that equal to y, then I get y equals x squared minus 8x plus 16 plus 7, and then simplifying that, I get x squared minus 8x, 16 plus 7 is 23, plus 23, so then c equals minus 8 and d equals 23. Moving on to question 21, it says that a crime scene is formed from 2 triangles as shown. Police tape is needed to go around the perimeter. Police tape comes in 20-meter rolls. Work out the number of rolls needed. So for this, as you can see, we've got angles, we've got triangles. We're going to have to do some trig. So for this, let's first of all work out each of these individual parts. So if I just label this as x, let's label this as... Would I need? Yes, I will need this, so let's call that y, and let's call that z. So the perimeter equals x plus 30 plus z plus 38. And let me just put a little box around that so I know what that is. So let's now work out the individual bits. So if I take this triangle, right angle triangle, and know what I know, so that's 30, this angle here is 55. So then working out x, I'm going to be using, well, this is A, that's H, that's O. So using cos, I get cos 55 equals x over 30. So x equals 30 times cos 55. And I could either leave my answer as 30 cos 55, or I could write it as a decimal, so 30 cos 55 equals 17.207 blah blah blah. So then working out what y is, so let's just change that for a y. Then what I end up with is I'm going to use sine, so I've got sine 55 equals y over 30, in which then I get y equals 30 sine 55, in which I could leave that as that, or I could convert that into a decimal, so 55, and I get an answer of 24.574 blah blah blah. So I've got my I've got my y value and I've got my x value. So then if I take that non-right angle triangle like so, and doesn't need to be neat, and this is y, so I'm going to label that as the exact, well I could use, well let's use 24 because I think that's probably what most students would use, but you can use the exact value. So then, and we want to try and work out what z is. So for this I need to use the cosine rule, and the cosine rule is z squared equals, and it's going to be, if I label this as A, capital A, B, C. Now the rule for the cosine rule is a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos A. So using this formula, I get z squared, so it's going to be 24.574 squared plus 38 squared minus bracket. I always tend to put brackets around the 2bc cos A. So I've got 24.574 times 38 times cos 80. Now if I type that all into my calculator, I get a z squared value of 1723.592152, or something of that ilk, depending on your rounding of y. So z equals the square root of that, which is 41.516. So then now I've got my values that I need. So I've got z, that's different. I've got my z, I need my x, which is here, and I've got my two other values. So then the perimeter of the shape is going to be x, which is 17.207, plus 30, plus z, which is 41.516, plus 38, and I get that the perimeter is going to be roughly around 126.7. Now the meter rolls comes in 20, and that's in meters. So then to work out how many rolls I need, I divide that by 20, and it comes up to around 6.3 something. Let's quickly do that. So 126.7 divided by 20 equals 335 rolls needed. Now, so therefore we round that up, and I'm going to need 7 rolls. So moving on to our last question, it says the cumulative frequency diagram shows the times taken by runners to complete a half marathon. On the grid opposite, draw a histogram to represent the data. Use this table to help you. So first things first, what we need to do is, using the cumulative frequency diagram, is to try and find the cumulative frequency values. So what I need to do is, using the cumulative frequency diagram, is read off along the horizontal axes 100, 120, 160, 200, 300 to see what the cumulative frequency values at those points are. So at 100, I get a cumulative frequency value, I would say, of 8. At 120, I would say that number there is at 56. At 160, it's dead on 100. At 200, it's dead on 110. And at 300, it's 120. So if I then write down those values in the table, so I've got 8, I've got 56, I've got 100, 110 and 120. Now moving on to the next table, to work out the frequency, all I've got to do is, using the cumulative frequency values, is just take away the number above. So for this first frequency, it's just going to be 8 because I've got no numbers above 8. For the second one, I'm going to do 56 take away 8, which is 48 rather. And let me just show you how I've worked that out. So this is going to be 56 take away 8. For the next one, I'm then going to do 100 take away 56, which is 44. For this value here, I'm going to do, let me just change that to blue. For this value here, I'm going to do 110 take away 100, which is 10. And for this box here, I'm going to do 120 take away 110, which is 10. I can then work out the class widths by taking away the upper bound by the lower bound. So that's going to be 20, 20, 40, 40 and 100. Then to work out the frequency density, all I've got to do is just divide the frequency by the class width, which if I either use my head or use a calculator, I get 0.4, 2.4, there we go, 2.4, then get 1.1, and I get 0.25, and then I get 0.1. Now in the histogram, what I want to do is I need to plot these groups against the cumulative frequency, the frequency density, which are these numbers here. So these numbers here represent the height of the bars, and these numbers here represent the width of the bars. And if I do that on a histogram, then what I should end up with is something that looks like this. And you want to make sure that you are labeling the diagrams, or the height of the box is frequency density. I've decided to go up with each little group of 5 boxes represents 0.2, so I can write a 0 there, and I'm going up in increments of 0.2. And again, you can choose whichever scale you want, but you want to try and pick one that's easy for you. And again, the height of those bars should be 0.4, 2.4, should be 1.1, and 0.25, and finally 0.1. And obviously the groupings of each of those bars need to be correct as well. And that concludes the end of this paper.